All right, so on today's agenda, there's Sven is going to present on Power BI in 2023, a year in review. And just so you know who Sven is, he's also one of the co-organizers for the BI user group, but more specifically for the Power BI user group. And he works for SADA Analytics, so it's co-hosted between SADA Analytics and Intellect. Okay, and then the next item on the agenda is going to be Power BI projects that we're going to continue, and we'll see what Michael could serve up for us today, but actually it's going to be an open discussion on Power BI projects, and for those who have used it, what their experience has been. If maybe just the wording Power BI projects is unfamiliar, it's source control, or maybe even more simple, difference control. Making sure it integrates with stuff like Git, or at least that's one of the benefits of it. So, yeah, that's really interesting. Then we'll do a survey, or we might do an announcement before survey. We'll leave the survey right till the end, just to get some insights on how this year went and what we can do next year. Okay, and then you can see that Teams is very new to us because we still have Zoom etiquette on the slide. Yes, let's make this better. So Teams etiquette, and while I'm on that note, we've permanently switched over to Teams in all our rooms at the Intellect offices. So yeah, it's quite new to us, so we're still adapting, but I believe all future sessions will be on Teams and not on Zoom. Which is also why we had to send the last minute update on email. So apologies for that, and I hope that everyone found their way here. Okay. Then just some general etiquette, it would be nice to have your video on so that we can see who's talking if you're joining remotely. And yeah, please join your audio, mute your audio just while the presenter is speaking. And preferably use the raise hand option, unless it's an open discussion, then feel free to chip in anytime. Okay, and just so you know where we are right now, on the BI user group, we follow the format for odd numbered months. We have a main topic, and then a bit of an open discussion, which we call a workshop, and that's ideally when we'd like to have laptops open and try out things. And then on even numbered months, we have what we call news flashes. So there's some BI news, what's the latest in the world of BI. And then BI flash is just a very quick talk, 5 minutes, maybe max 10 minutes on anything small. And we also use it as a format just to encourage people to speak, so that they don't need to prepare something elaborate. Okay, and then in terms of the dates for the year, on the last event of the year, the next event will be in January. It's 25 January, if I remember correctly. It will also be a hybrid, so in person and remotely. And maybe on that note, I'd just like to mention we highly encourage joining in person if you can. Of course, you're in a different city and it's difficult to get here. That's understandable, and we'd like to continue catering for those people, but we believe that you can get the best value from being here in person and having the discussion, making the connections. So we're going to keep on encouraging. Okay, so that's it from me on the listing side and introductions. So next up, going over to Sven. We are in 2023, a year in review.
Cool. Thank you. So I'm now finally muted, which means I'm talking through the main microphones. Hopefully everyone can hear me. And I actually didn't have my camera on, which was, that's coming on now, and I'm going to share quickly. So, hello everyone. If you can see my screen, which is Power BI, well, I can see it above, I can see it over there, so clearly it's presenting. Okay, so my name is Sven. Thank you for the introduction. I'm actually doing the top features in coordination with Sia, my colleague. Sia is the newsman, and so in this case, we're effectively giving you a summary of the news from the year, okay, from the year of 2023. I've actually done this presentation sort of every year for the last few years. So I'm following the same method in the beginning, and then I'm handing over to Sia. Okay, so just let me just explain to you what I've done. And I actually tried to make the fonts big and bold so you could all see it. I'm just going to zoom in a bit because
I spotlighted you and that actually made everything smaller.
I was going to say, no, you can take me out of there. I don't need to be there.
Okay.
Let me stop my camera.
Stop spotlighting. There we go.
Okay.
Better.
But now you see actually turn my camera off. Well, I want to try and make the screen as big as possible, but even, I mean, look, without my spectacles, I can't see that. Can you guys see? Because if not, I'll just zoom in even further.
I can see very well. Good on remote. Can see.
Can you?
Yeah.
Okay, just my old eyes. Okay, fine. So look, I've zoomed in a lot. Okay, so basically what I've done here is I went to the Power BI website and scraped each page that has the announcements, the monthly announcements. Just to remind everyone, that happens once a month, except for January. Okay, January there aren't any updates. And since we're the 30th of December, I don't yet have December's updates. So I do have all the others. So if you just have a look here, 2023 so far, excluding December, have been 227 new features. Now, that number is actually even higher than that, but I exclude certain things. So I don't count connectors, updated or new connectors. Okay, and I also don't count updates to visuals, new visualizations and things like that, because otherwise that number would probably double. Okay, and then I also don't count if there was a release on mobile in February and then an update to the same feature in May. I count that once, not twice. Otherwise, again, those numbers are very, very big. Okay, so even with those sort of rules taken into account, 227 new feature releases excluding December is pretty impressive. We all know that Click and the rest don't do it anywhere near as often as that. So it's pretty impressive. Last year, 2022, on the same basis, although that's 11 months worth, 264, and so there's 10 months worth, 227. So pretty much on track. Okay. Then what we're here to do is to talk about admittedly, in my opinion, the top features. Okay. And I went through it in a particular way, and I said, well, okay, if it's a very niche thing, it's very cool, but it only affects a few people, then maybe I say it's a special mention, okay? Or it's in the top group, but it's not an A or a B, okay? So I've categorized it. In actual fact, may as well say that. I mean, as analysts, that's our job. We categorize and group things. So you categorize a long list to make it more usable and more manageable. So we categorize it either by month or by data modeling or by reporting or by visualization, that kind of story. And then I went a step further and said, is it in the top category, yes or no? And then once I got all the tops, then I said, is it an A or a B or a C, to try and sort of classify more carefully. So anyway, I mean, the number of features, this is now in general, data and connectivity, 110 features. And then, fabric, okay, that's an important point. If I had done this, including fabric stuff, it would have taken the whole presentation, the whole session. We would never have been able to do it. So it felt like I was cheating the system, but I didn't include fabric because there's equally this many number of feature enhancements each month on the fabric side of things. Okay. All right, that's almost sort of like the introduction and that type of story. So this page is zoomed in. Okay, so just to orientate yourself. Okay, so there's all the not applicables. That's the connectors and the visualizations and the repeated elements. Okay. All right. So now that's the background and the introduction. Now I'm going to move to the top A and B. Okay. Just go a little bit sideways. Okay. So I'm looking specifically at 2023. Okay. And I had started thinking about this in early November, okay, and the November release hadn't come out. So I was like, oh, there's some cool stuff, February to October. And then the November release came out, and I said, wow, actually, I can make the top list just from November's release. They were very busy, okay, very, very busy. Okay, so there's some really good stuff in the November release. maybe December's going to be quiet. In fact, October was quiet and December's probably quiet because I think they were focusing on November. Anyway, so November, in my opinion, had 5 top features. Okay, and May had 4. That is because I am counting Fabric's announcement in. That's when it came. It was in May. All right, so that's a very, very long introduction. So I think I'm going to stop now. Okay, I've categorized them. I would like Siet to go through his list of his 5 favorites of this list. And then with whatever time we've got left before Michael's session, I'll run through the other top A and Bs that Siet hasn't covered. Okay.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to share my screen. So let's share the screen.
So we move that mic closer. Huh?
Can you guys hear me there on the call? Okay. Oh, okay. All right, so I hope you guys can hear me. Yeah, so as Sven has covered the summary of the top 2023 feature releases, again, I had to just select 5. So the 5 that I selected are the ones that stood out for me. So yeah, do bear in mind, I mean, with Sven having to show us there was 227 releases just for the 10 months, to select 5 is a bit of a challenge because, you know, the 5 that might be applicable to me, someone else might not use as much, but let's go through them and actually see what I've selected for my list. Okay. All right, so that's just for information. For those of you who don't yet know me, my name is Sia Zungu, and that's just details about me and who I am. All right, so starting with the first one, which is the hybrid tables. So the hybrid tables actually, although I do feel like it's a bit of a cheat because it was initially announced in 2021, but it was made generally available in 2023. So I'm counting it as a 2023 feature, which has now been polished, right? So what basically I like about this is the whole thing of having a table partitioned into data that could be import mode, direct query, and some incremental refresh all in one. So you can think about large tables where you've got a lot of transactions happening. You might want to archive maybe data older than X amount of years and let that not refresh. And then maybe always refresh the last quarter once a day, and then have direct query being the most recent day updating every couple of minutes. So that's what you would want to have, because that would make your model a lot more optimized and a lot more efficient, rather than having to reload millions and millions of rows every time. So I thought that was one cool feature there. The second on my list is the reference labels in the new card visual. I think this one is actually going to be a big game changer because it is going to replace the current card visual and the multi-row card visual, along with the KPI visual that they've had in Power BI since the beginning. So now you actually have this reference labels that they've introduced with the new card labels, with the new card visual, that allows you to actually add additional measures and add additional formatting to enhance the card visual. Already from the release of it, you could do things like, you know, put background images, do funky things. You could have already the multi-cards in there. But with this enhancement of actually having reference labels where you can put additional measures that just make it that much more powerful, I think this is, for me, from a visual perspective, one of the best features that they've released. Number 3 is the button slicer with images and hover stats. So we've had button slicers now for also quite a while. It's been there since the inception of Power BI, but you couldn't really do much in the formatting department. It was very limited in that, and also you couldn't change like the backgrounds, the colors. You always had to stay with this black that they gave you. So now you can actually change that and have either background images or background formatting with different statuses for hover, press, and select and default. So it does now bring life into the report in terms of what we can do in that avenue. Again, from a visual perspective, this will go a long way than, you know, having a bland report with the buttons, and or sometimes you'd have to download like third-party visuals to actually achieve some of this stuff. Oops, sorry, went too far there. Okay, and then this I think is now the 4th on my list. The one lake integration for import mode semantic models. This is on preview. I might actually talk about it again when it goes generally available, but this is just one of those things where, again, moving with some of the things that they're doing with their one lake and some of the integration that's coming through, you can now actually publish your semantic model and then have that available within your OneLake. So you can actually write these tables that are within your semantic model in the delta tables, as they call it, and make it available to the people within your organization. So if I'm publishing an import model with some tables, someone else can actually connect to the OneLake and use all or some of the tables that I've created in their own reporting. So again, when it comes to integration and making things much more simpler to connect to, I think this is where we're moving in the right direction, as opposed to, you know, having someone have their own source, and you might also have to source the same information, but this kind of optimizes that. So I also thought this was a very good feature. Then last but not least, this is now for the Model Explorer, which is also in public preview, but I do think it's worth a mention with calculation groups. So for a while now, we used tools such as like Tabular Editor and Visual Studio to actually get a view of the semantic model so that we can create calculation groups and calculation items that are then used inside of the Power BI report. But now with the Model Explorer, you actually have the functionality, albeit not 100% of it. Some of the stuff is still not yet fully done within the Model Explorer, but you can now create calculation groups inside of Power BI natively, as opposed to using Tabular Editor or Visual Studio to achieve the same result. So in a nutshell, pretty much that's my top 5 list. And I know there's, other features there that could have been added on the list, but yeah, just given what has been released, to choose 5 has been a difficult exercise, but I do think this covers the scope of at least a little bit of the landscape that Power BI covers. So that is it from my side.
Cool. We've still got about 9 minutes, I think, if we're going to keep half an hour for the second half. In which case, can I take the share back?
Sure.
And
you can just leave like 2 minutes at the end, just for everyone to mention the
good idea.
The number 1.
Yeah. So in fact, probably people will need a bit of a reminder. So I'm going to show a bit of a list now. So I think that could be helpful. So let me just do that. All right. So there we go. Okay. So in this case, forget about all the grouping and the classification. Let me just scroll to the right here of this table. I'll put it into focus mode once I push all the right buttons. Okay. And this is filtered only to A's and B's. Okay, so it's the short list. Okay, if you can see up there. So let's just see. So Sia has gone and covered the new card visual here at the bottom. Okay, it came out in June, but it was enhanced and so on. And there's still more enhancements coming. There's hybrid tables that Sia covered as well. Okay, so there's one: edit your data model in the Power BI service. Okay. That is a cool thing, except I have put there, be careful. It's an automatic save. Okay, so if you make a change, it's going to automatically save it, and that's the report that everyone's looking at, saved automatically. Okay, and there's no version control, you can't check in, check out, that kind of story. But it is quite nice, and in certain circumstances, you can just go and make some changes without having to go and download and publish and do all those things. Although the integration that we've been talking about last month, and again the second half of today, about source control and GitHub integration, probably sorts all that out. Okay, I really do enjoy dynamic format strings. Okay, so if you've got certain visuals that have a combination of percentages and rand values or different currencies, you can actually cater for all of that with dynamic strings with formulas in there, rather than saying this measure is always a %. Okay, and so that is very cool. Where were we there? Button slicer, see, I mentioned that. Okay, so there's the Fabric announcement, and obviously there's 101 things that come from Fabric. Power BI Direct Lake. Oh yeah, okay, well, this is in public preview.
That's the number 1 feature.
I was about to say, I haven't tried it. I'm desperate to try it, but I really think that's a game changer. I mean, it really is amazing. So that's, for those of you who know what direct query is, that's the method that you use in Power BI when you want to connect to a data set, either a very large data set or one that you want to connect to in real time, so that the data, whatever a transaction that happened a few seconds ago, will be visible in your report. So that's direct query mode. Okay, most of the times we use import because there's some limitations with direct query. But with Fabric and the One Lake and the Parquet files and all that fancy stuff, they are creating something, well, they have created something called Direct Lake, which is direct query and One Lake combined, okay? And it's basically saying the data is stored in One Lake, but you can retrieve it as fast as if it were the direct query mode, okay, live, real time. So, right, if that is true, that's amazing. Okay, so let's see.
They showed it yesterday.
Okay. JP, did they? Okay, so
Yeah, no, they
see demos and stuff, because I mean, no one's really, I haven't seen, although I haven't actively looked for it.
You got it in production.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I must faster, sharper, quicker. But yeah, I'm keen to
Even that part of Fabric.
is part of Fabric. Yeah, you can't have it without Fabric. Okay, this direct lake thing. So that's what you must do. Okay.
That was it's quite instantaneous, but except Keegan, what's the guy's name?
Yeah.
Kieran,
Yeah.
the presenter.
Yeah.
His tenant was in the US, so there was some latency, but it's fast. But
Okay, well that's this one over here. The whole developer mode, that is part of the GitHub integration and Power BI project files and a whole lot of other stuff, so that's fine. On object interaction, love it or hate it, it's here to stay. It came out, when did it come out? A couple of months ago, like March, April. There's no, there, March. And it's just meant to try and make all of the formatting and everything more like Excel, okay? And there've been about 10 enhancements to it since they've released it. We're just counting it as one enhancement. There's what Sia mentioned, the One Lake integration, narrative visual with Copilot. Okay, so that's smart narratives. It's been around for a long time. They had some AI in it. I always thought it was a bit gimmicky. The new Copilot version is taking it to the next level. However, don't get too excited. It came out in November. There were 3 Copilot things in November, and only on the one article did it say, not in fine print, but did it say this is for premium capacities only, P1, okay, big cash. And so I'm assuming that Copilot is premium, all Copilot is premium, which is a bummer.
Well, it's probably OpenAI based. I'm a OpenAI subscriber and it's expensive.
Okay,
So
so
it-
it genuinely makes sense. It's just a little bit disappointing because also, we're on premium, but not the P premium, and premium per user also doesn't cut it. So it's genuine P1 or higher, okay, which in Fabric terms is F64 and higher. It's big cash. But anyway, so Copilot is will make that smart narratives, what they call narrative visual, that much better. And there's another one in here somewhere. Okay, there's the calculation groups, DAX query view. Okay, yeah. So now in November, you can now write DAX queries in Power BI, and I'm in focus mode. But there we go. If you can see the corner of my screen, on the top left there is the little query thing. You can store your queries in there. You can actually even edit queries, test them, see the results, and then write it back to your model. I think it's very cool. There's Copilot for Fabric, where they're going to help you write measures and things like that, better than the current quick measure story, but it's premium. And then composite models. Okay, so look, that's just always been my favorite. It's gone GA now. So that's where you've got someone else's data set. Okay. You've got someone else's data set, beautiful, all the models and their relationships, and they shared it with you, and you want to add something of your own. Okay, so an Excel spreadsheet that categorizes things in a particular way, or maybe your own data model, and you map the two together. It makes it slower, yes, maybe that's why you make it. Okay, but the point is, it's the ultimate in collaboration. So Michael is a supplier. I am a purchasing, I purchase from him. He's got his production plan. I've got my demand forecasting. I combine his model with mine, and I can see when he's running out, he should be making more because I'm ordering more and he's not on top of it yet. I can get him on the phone. Okay, anyway, so yeah, that's the A's and B's. Now, this is the thing. It's a long list. So I probably have refreshed some of your memories, but there are many features that I didn't cover and that came out in March or April that you might not remember. But let's open it up and see if anyone in the audience online or in person has something that they would like to say is equally good, let's put it out there.
Just before we do that, I just want to see how much time we have. So, Michael, how much time do you need?
Well, I'm like, it's more of a free flow thing. So
Okay, so we just need to leave enough time.
go with it. So yeah. Okay,
Okay,
let's give it 5 weeks.
Max.
I speak fast, right? So
Cool.
So,
Don't
well,
speak
let's
too fast.
first hear from Anthony.
But then,
Online.
it's not too fast.
Hi all. Yeah, it's good to be on user group with all the Sappers, I must say. Yeah, Michael, stop giving me grief. So yeah, I mean, I found the composite modeling hell of a useful from my point of view in terms of a project that I had to work on where we had to combine I think 4 different data sets together to create a summary report then for a client. And if we had to go and reconfigure everything to completely rewrite the data sets, I don't think we would have ever finished the project, to be honest. So I think the composite modeling has been one of the ones that I've found the most useful.
Excellent. That's 2 versus 1, so we vetoed Michael.
yeah, but he doesn't count.
Stirring.
Let's see any hands online. Thoughts here in person?
We actually used the new card visuals in a new Power report. It was the first report I made in a while, and I was very impressed with the new card visuals until I found out that apparently you can't format paint them. You can't select the format and apply it to a different one. You have to do all of them manually.
And you probably find that makes sense because there are so many things that you can change. Look, it's a clicky thing. I mean, you got to click and format. So it takes a lot of work. It's one of those things for an executive dashboard, which be calm, be patient, allocate a lot of time. Okay, nice music in the background, go and program the thing, and 8 hours later, you've got the best executive dashboard ever. And hopefully you don't have to do another one for a while because it's a lot of clicking. But it takes that dashboarding stuff to a completely different level.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah, really it does. Yeah.
I'll see you in person.
I'll say the source control, the Git integration has been a game changer for us. We developed our own Python run blob storage source control tracking system. Try and manage it, and it's much easier, much less error prone, much less code to maintain.
But personally, that's for me also the number one feature of the year. Well, I mean, Intellect was first a software company and then expanded to the rest, and it was always, how do I put it, challenging to tell your colleagues on projects that no, you can't source control Power BI, and now you can. So yeah, that's definitely game changing, and now you can actually make it part of the entire project. Besides just the Power BI artifacts, I think the whole application, the whole code base, the whole database integration, everything. So yeah.
I wish you could easily do something with data flows too, because we source control the data flow code, but I don't really know of an easy way to get it there except copying and pasting, and it's difficult to admin that process.
True. What I didn't mention earlier is that I've only taken the features from the monthly blogs. Okay. Now, if you think that's overwhelming enough to keep you up to date, there are also many other blogs that come out, regularly during the month, and sometimes they're duplicated on the monthly release, and other times they're not. And so there's, could be 5 more or 10 more announcements per month. There's a lot of them. One of them I really like is Excel connected tables. Now that's not on this list because it wasn't actually announced in any of the monthly releases. Now Excel connected tables is a way that I'm just wondering if I can quickly show you, but maybe not. Anyway, on a visual, when you export the data, instead of it being a once-off export, you literally do the export and it will create the ODC link to Excel, which means in a week's time or a month's time, you open that Excel file and you just hit refresh and it brings in the new data. I absolutely love that. But that wasn't on the list. It wasn't in the monthly releases. Actually, not sure why, but the point is it wasn't. And a lot of people, as we know, want to get it in Power BI, but they also want it in Excel.
Export to Excel.
Yeah. And so that's what you can do. Okay, let's see. This is quite a cool one. Deduplication rules for composite models. Okay, so now it's one of those things where if you've never used it, you don't really care, but if you need it, you really want it. Okay, so you've got this composite model, and in there's something called a calendar, which all models should have. And then you go and link up your own data model in here, and you've also got a calendar. Now you've got two calendars, and the names fight with each other. So now what this thing does is it says, okay, if there's a fight, which data model must take precedence, and then the other one, it will just do an underscore, a prefix or a suffix, which I can say. So it'll be Sven's calendar versus default calendar, as an example. So that's quite a nice thing. Data sets. Okay, so the announcement wasn't great. Data sets are coming to mobile. Okay, that was in July. What that is saying is you can refresh a data set from your phone. So that's quite cool. If you're in charge of one and you're on holiday and it hasn't refreshed, you don't have to get your laptop out and log into the service and do your thing. You can do it from your phone. So that's nice. Automatic replica synchronization. Okay, so here's, I put it as special mention. Because unless you've got like enormous models with an enormous number of users all over the world, you probably don't care about this one. But if you've got lots and lots of users, then this automatic replica synchronization. So it's going to put your data set, cache it on multiple servers around the country, around the world, so that if lots of users are hitting it at the same time, they're all going to have a fast, zippy feel to it. But yeah, you'd have to.
They've actually just made an Azure feature available. Power BI users. I mean, that's available over here. Yeah. But it's cool.
Yeah. Okay. This thing about work seamlessly with Power BI Desktop and OneDrive and SharePoint. So you can open it from SharePoint. You can open it from OneDrive. In actual fact, what you don't realize is that actually the first time you do that, it's creating a workspace in your service. It's publishing the file and it's putting it there. So I didn't really like that much, because now suddenly you're going to have a whole lot of workspaces with a whole lot of files, but actually I researched it a bit more. I think actually most of the times those workspaces are hidden. So it's not like you've got 5 workspaces and after people start using this for a couple of months, suddenly you've got 30 workspaces because it's automatically created. It's not like that. I think they're hidden, but the point is it actually puts it in the service so that when you open it from SharePoint, you can see the report. And that's because you don't need to have Power BI Desktop loaded, and you don't need to download the file and open it in Desktop, because it will open it in the service after it's done it.
So is it almost like it's cheating an embed view for you to get that
view?
I
suppose it is. So you open it and double click it in SharePoint, it pushes it to the service, it gets it all ready, and then it pops it back into SharePoint again, so you can embed and view the report. Yeah. And then look, if anyone else does that, you've already done the first piece, so it'll be a bit quicker and it'll work that way. Yeah, that's quite nice. Row-level security enhancements, additional formatting based on string values. Oh yeah, that's normally you can conditional values. So anything greater than 10, anything less than 10 in the bar chart, whatever, you can highlight that. Now you can say any bicycles, any category contains mountain bikes, then that column in your bar chart will be a different color, so it stands out or something like that. So that's quite nice. Okay, well, look, this little, if you've ever spent any time in tenant settings, like there's 101 things you can go through, and then they keep adding new stuff. But now at least they put the little new thing next to it, and I think they actually even put it at the top. So you don't have to scroll through 100 things to try and find what is new. It's easier for you to get to. Okay. All right, that's probably enough. I don't know. How do you just conversation?
Yeah, let's. I just want to read Dion's comment here. You can always use the source code and copy paste visuals. So I think that was back on that reference card. And his vote is for source code editing. So we have 2 on that so far.
Well, it's good timing then, because that's where we go.
Yeah, I think on that note, let's go to the next topic, which is on Power BI projects. So Michael, are you first going to walk around and see if everyone did their homework?
Did everybody do their homework? Yeah. So only 2 or 3 people have their laptops. Okay, so I mean, obviously last month sort of went through the new project.
Yeah.
Things are usually pretty good. So we went through this new project format where what they've done is they've broken the PBIX file. That is essentially it's a zipped version of all of these little files, and they've exposed them as a folder, and Power BI can connect and work in that in real time, right? Because we could always extract it and check that into source control, but we could almost never get it back because you have to zip it in a very specific way. There was a tool called PBI Tools, if anybody played with that, that actually he did that. So a guy named Matthias Tierbach, who was actually leading this whole, well, he's not leading it, he's championing it, should I say. So he sort of built this tool that managed to extract it out, and then you could sort of zip it back in, but Microsoft's now building that into the product itself, which is pretty important because his tool was always a third-party thing. You know, you'd have to do it and you'd have to remember to then go and compile it back before you could do anything with it, right? So they're in the first phase at the moment where all they're doing is they're exposing that file to you. So it's not really, they didn't modify the files in any way. Because one of the things you might have done, have you played in those files? Okay, and the JSON it's not what they called hardened, right? So it's that suggestion that Tian just made, that is not supported. You break your Power BI report doing that, you're on your own, right? So they want to get the content of that file to a state where you can actually make those kind of text changes and be able to get a result out. And if it fails, if let's say you mucked up your JSON, you forgot a little closing tag or something, Power BI should be able to, bring up a little Clippy or a little Copilot or whatever and say, hey, it looks like you've got a mistake. Maybe you need to do this. Yeah. At the moment, it's just gonna bug out. It's gonna, this isn't valid. No, I can't work with this.
Yeah. So we've had issues with mergers.
Yes.
Sometimes things.
100%. Yeah. And one of the problems with the mergers, right, is because it's an internal format in which none of that's respected. Sometimes you'll have an array of visuals, because that's all it is. It's an array of little JSON types. And there's no guarantee that those things are going to be in the same order. So you might save the same visual. It just swaps all of those things in an array. Source control says, hey, you deleted 30 visuals and you added another 30. You actually didn't do anything. They're just in a different order. So those diffs, they want to get it in a way that gets those diffs. Now that's phase 2. Phase 1 is actually to get the format in a more usable format. So we use something called TimZil. So if you've ever worked in Visual Studio, you've created a BIM model. Okay, and that's a JSON-esque format of your model where it describes all the Power Query and all the columns and all of these things. They're moving to this TimZil. Okay, TimZil. Okay. And that is actually a YAML format, right? And it's going to allow you to actually do things like have one file per table, okay? Which means that it's very easy for people to work on. It's very easy to find where things are, and then you don't end up with these conflicts because source control deals with different files very easily. It doesn't like things moving within a file, right? So if you've got a table per file, the order of these things doesn't matter, right? Versus TimZil could theoretically still cause all of that chaos. So that's the first phase. Once they get that TimZil thing, and that's currently in preview, I think. So it's not in the model yet, okay? But you can actually export it. So there's a Visual Studio product, Visual Code sort of extension that you can get that allows you to turn that TimZil model into a TimZil model. It doesn't roll off the tongue, obviously, all of these sort of names, but it's going to allow you to then sort of practice working with this new YAML format. But they've started documenting it. It's obviously being a private preview. It's not necessarily some preview-ish. Can't remember if it's private or public. This isn't being recorded, right? But yes, there is it'll have this new format that's going to make it a lot easier. And then that's what we're going to start working in, right? So we won't necessarily be using like Tabular Editor, but Tabular Editor can already support this new format, right? So if you actually go and use Tabular Editor, you can export it. You have to sort of enable that feature. But yeah, so you can get going with TimZil already. And then using this little command line shells or whatever it is, you can actually convert that to TimZil and publish publish to the service and stuff. So if you want to get going with it, it's a good time to start. But it's going to make these kind of things a hell of a lot easier, right? So yes, questions, I guess, is without necessarily a hard yard on what, because obviously this was to see what you guys came back with. And I think only one guy did his homework. Is that the feedback?
Well, I've done some homework.
Huh?
I'm a nerd. I've done
You did homework. Two pieces of homework.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we tried to implement this in our team, I don't know, 2 months ago or something like that. So it might have changed in time since. So it was pre-work, not homework. And we got to the point.
This is consulting. I'm going to send you a.
Yeah.
I can send you a bill, right? This is a professional thing, right?
So no, we playing around it. We had a model that we decided, okay, this is going to be our experiment guinea pig model. And we did the whole Power BI projects thing. And then we got to a point where we wanted to publish this now to a workspace. And then we found out that the publish button was grayed out. I don't know if we messed something up, but we pretty much got to that point.
Initially it was like that, but they fixed it.
They fixed it now. They,
So-
we also did other ways. Like we had a temp directory that we ignored in Git, and then when you wanted to publish, you would save to the temp directory and then publish from there. But it's a pain.
wow.
Okay.
But that's all fixed now.
Okay, so you can publish a Power BI project file to the service. Okay, well, that's pretty cool.
So you don't even have to publish to the service, right? Because remember, this is bound to source control.
Right.
So what I can do is I can just commit it to my repo, go into the workspace and say, go and get latest changes. And that is a publish, right? Without.
That's the part I like the most.
Yeah. So, and that in theory is the way we should be doing it, right? Because that ensures, and this is where we're going to get a bit of conflict between this idea of pipelines and source control, because the way deployment pipelines work in Power BI is not genuine CI/CD, right? Because we don't copy from, or we don't deploy from source control to each of our environments, right? From dev to UAT to prod. We actually publish everything into dev, and then we copy the content from there into the next environment, and then from next to the next. Which, now the problem, what I don't like is if I deploy something to dev, and then manually go and make a change, which now they've made it so easy to do whatever I want to my model, I can then promote that. And my source control, my whole CI/CD pipeline has no visibility. So hopefully they're going to have some sort of guardrails that we could sort of enable, right? So don't allow, sort of promotion. No, actually we want to do a proper, genuine CI/CD. We want to deploy, we want to create some artifact, and then we want to deploy that same artifact to those 3 different environments, right? So that's the hope. But I mean, that's a well-disciplined team. That shouldn't be a problem. We're all part of well-disciplined teams. Nobody ever tried to sneak anything around the back, so shouldn't be a huge issue. So that probably should be.
That's cool.
That probably should be fine.
I think the last time you said it is a bit buggy, okay? And so I noticed I wanted to do a particular experiment that we would want to use regularly, which is, in one file you've got multiple pages and you want to copy those whole pages with the bookmarks and everything and all the filters, you want to copy them across. So I replicated that. I had a file with 50 pages in it, and I had a file with a blank page. And I managed to do all of that. It was fine. Okay. I mean, we've tried it before, but that's definitely backdoor way, and it wasn't elegant, but it was possible. Anyway, when I tried to do it, it didn't actually like it. Okay. Something went wrong, and I thought, well, that's a bugger. But anyway, then I thought, okay, just try again, and then it worked perfectly. And then I actually could do it from this one, from A to B, make some changes in B, and move them back to A again. So it kept working backwards and forward, which is the way I was expecting it. So the first time around, I'm sure I did everything right, but it didn't like it. So that's
where the hardening is going to come in, right? They need to make it a format that's more amenable to.
Yeah.
So what would be nice is if they actually almost moved to that idea of folders, right? So if I could have a page or a file per page or something, then it becomes quite easy to move these pages in and out. Yeah. I was chatting to the PM of this feature, and because I kind of feel that if I swap page 1 and page 2, right, theoretically I'm moving those 2 things in the array, and source control says, hey, you deleted a page and added a page, kind of thing, right? Pizzas are here. Hey? In fact, that's why he's here, right? No. So I thought they should be adding like an index, right? Have an array of this is the array of pages, but they don't like that. because he says that array then becomes quite problematic for your source control. So,
well, the page is actually, that is also quite complicated because there's nothing that says this is page number 1, this is page number 2. There is something, you know, you've seen it before.
It's the ordinal in the array, right? But it's not an ordinal number.
But I have pages in my report that have been working for years that does not have an ordinal number.
Yep.
Okay, and you think, why was that? Because was that the last page I ever added or whatever? But it's still there, and when I actually moved it around in the sequence of the report, it still never got an ordinal number.
And you know why you can't actually use an ordinal number, right?
Yeah.
Actually, so because if, let's say I have 100 pages, and I take, page 99 and I make it page 0, what happens to page 1?
Yeah, they will go
Okay, so then you actually have an update in each page.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't want to actually have an ordinal number.
Yeah.
So currently they just use the array and
Display order.
huh?
It's just
Well, display, but if the display order is an element within that page, it needs to increment everything, right? So, I mean, my suggestion was actually having an element outside of the, part of the master array that actually listed, hey, this is the order. Yeah, the reason he's smarter than I am, so I'm sure it's a good reason. I can't quite remember what it was, but yeah, there's a lot of challenges that he has to get through, or that they have to get through, and it'll obviously be slow to roll out. I think Tim Dill is the priority at the moment, trying to get that into the model, and then the tooling and stuff that goes with it. Yeah, that'll be cool.
Another thing I tried is I wanted to do something on the front end, meaning pages, and then I also wanted to try something in the back end, meaning Power Query. So I thought, okay, let's see if I can find a query that is not loading. You know how you can right click and untick so that it doesn't load the query into Power BI. So I thought, well, can I see it in the, in that code, enable load, yes, now I just change it to no, or vice versa. It wasn't quite like that, but if you start to look at the code, you can see loaded tables have this kind of a pattern to the code, and unloaded tables have it. So you could theoretically actually do all of that, but in this case, it's far easier just to go into the Power Query, right click, and enable or disable. But ultimately, I'm looking for that kind of stuff where you can programmatically go in and change some of those attributes without having to go in and.
But you will. I mean, eventually using regex or grep or whatever, you're going to be able to do whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
So that's the idea.
That'll be very
to enable the true enterprise kind of features, right? Because Power BI started as a self-service tool, which is why they built the PBIX, because there was nothing more convenient for a user than a single file that contained everything. It was a pain in the bum for enterprises who had these disciplines already, and then all of a sudden couldn't do anything, right? We went back to checking stuff into SharePoint because if you could ever call that source control, right?
Do you ever have any issues with caching? We had to delete cache files sometimes because the reports didn't want to open.
Where in desktop, or are you talking about a service?
In the using the source control.
Yeah.
You would clone a repo, and then you want to open a report, and then it doesn't. There's some error in.
Like a git clone, like cloning the repo. It shouldn't cause any issues.
Do you remember what the error was we got? You've had to delete caches twice. I've had to do it once.
I don't remember exactly.
Talking about the data cache.
Yes.
Okay, right. Okay, so that's obviously an important concept within this, right? So remember, as part of that PBIX file, there was actually a file in there called an ABF file. And an ABF is actually a backup file for an analysis services module. So that actually contained all the data, and that's what was the biggest problem with this. This thing was big, and it was binary, and it wasn't useful, but it consumed all this space. So you're going to notice the first thing when you set up any sort of Git repo is it's going to do a git ignore on that data space, right? But that does mean that whenever I download, the nice thing is if I go into source control and SharePoint, and I pull down somebody's model, I had the data that they had in already.
Yeah.
That doesn't work anymore. Okay, because that cache is not relevant anymore. So the first thing you're going to always have to do is a full refresh on any data model. Now you need to think about that. Given the size of some of these models, how are you going to handle that? You probably want to start having some way to minimize rows in your development environment kind of thing, so you don't, everybody doesn't have to start their day with a 20-minute refresh, right?
It's like if you've worked on a report and I've made modifications, and then you pull those modifications, then it doesn't even open. It just says there's some mismatch in the data.
It would be invalid, right? Because he's changed the model. You've pulled the definition down, but the ABF that he has is the old one, because that never got checked in, which is correct. But yes, there isn't, and that's part of that whole hardening process. It shouldn't error out. It should gracefully say, hey, this cache is no longer available. Please hit refresh too.
Because that's the issue. Is it doesn't even tell you there's a data model mismatch. It just says, I'm not working and I'm not opening, and then it spends 2 days.
Yes. Yep. So that's the that's why, again, it's a private preview, so they often have guarantees. They took those learnings. They've got a hell of a lot of telemetry, right? What you probably don't know is that Microsoft watch everything that you do in Power BI. So they're seeing all of the stuff, and they're watching these. They're seeing people's Power BI models crash and all that.
When I'm seeing the frown, they actually look at it.
Yeah. So ironically, that's Azure Data Explorer. I know this is now going out. Have you heard of Azure Data Explorer? So it's Microsoft's best tool that nobody knows about, right? But it's this real-time streaming engine that's made to ingest a lot of data. And it was actually the Power BI team that built it, because when they released Power BI to the service, there was so much telemetry coming back. They didn't have a product that could deal with it. Spark couldn't deal with it. SQL couldn't deal with it, right? Hadoop definitely couldn't deal. There was nothing. So they had to go and build their own engine just to deal with their own telemetry. So they built this tool, and then it became the foundation of any sort of that log analytics stuff that you're doing in Azure. It's all running off this thing, right? But that's how much telemetry comes off it. So yes, they see it. Doesn't mean that they prioritize it. I know we got some comments yesterday about when am I going to see Huawei? I was never able to say that. So, but yes, they obviously look at who pays the most. Enterprise features are always going to win and all that kind of stuff. But yes, they absolutely look at it, right? They were always very good. You've all been onto ideas.powerbi.com, right? And they update and they say, this is what we're working on, and they were planning, and they always say this, and so they're fairly good. I suppose nobody can ever be as good as we always hope they are, but they are fairly good. Yeah. I suppose to call it a little urban, no, not even urban legend, it actually happened, right? So this example of somebody submitted an idea to ideas.com, and it just happened to be on the same day that Microsoft internally ran a little hackathon for their Power BI team. So one of the developers picked up that feature that day and deployed it into the product that afternoon. You're never going to get that kind of turnaround without that, right? But it was something. It was, it was the ability to edit when you have a totals column, right? For like in a matrix or whatever, to edit the word total on the,
Oh, right. Okay.
It was that feature, right?
Okay.
So, but yes, they do listen as much as they can. Bear in mind they are resource constrained, and everything nowadays is Fabric. So yeah, it's coming, right?
Yeah, well, November was an enormous release month, like I said.
You had to.
You're like, I'll just take 20 minutes to go through it. No. It was like an hour and a half reading stuff and trying it and this and that. You're like, okay.
Well, their inherent problem is that because it was Microsoft Ignite, which is the big conference that announced everything, and they knew they were going up against Copilot, right? So they absolutely had to have a lot of flash, right? So, and they delivered, right? They did well. Right. The other great. Who else did their homework? Didn't do their homework. Had questions.
I just recently, so this week, I saw that on the Power BI service there was a thing called Git integration, and it was only on premium users, premium licenses. So I want to ask, how is that different to get into this Power BI projects?
It's actually part of the same project. So the idea is, when I gave you an example of how you could publish via the backdoor, that's using that other process. So what this does is the service can actually point to a Git repo and pull the files from there.
Built-in space? Well, sorry.
It checks in the whole workspace. You're
Can
right.
each
It's the whole workspace.
workspace point to its own branch? That's right.
In workspace, you're going to hook up to a branch within a repo, right? So then all of a sudden, branching strategies are going to become interesting, because do we have dev test kind of prod, or are we still using our deployment pipelines for that? So we only have one. So we, it's going to get interesting how these two ecosystems. But essentially, that is that. So I can hook it up to currently only Azure DevOps. Okay, GitHub will come. Okay, but so if you want to use GitHub with your Power BI, you actually have to use GitHub, and then you have to push the deploy button. There's none of that auto sync. But it's quite nice, because what you can actually do is then you can, and I think I showed this last month, is when you go and create a Power BI, let's say I just go PBI X file and I publish it to the service. And then I go and check that into source control and then do clone that repo. You'll actually notice it doesn't create part of that GitHub or that PBIP file. It creates this PBIP file, which is like a Visual Studio solution file. It just points to the rest of the artifacts. It doesn't generate that file. Okay, so you have to actually go and generate that file yourself, right? If you wanted it,
Only on GitHub. It doesn't. Only on GitHub when you.
No. So
Always.
No. The service didn't, because the service didn't really So it's actually been happening for years. It's been splitting up the visual and the model, right? It's been creating two folders in the back end. That's why whenever you publish a report, it creates a data set and then it creates a bloody dashboard that nobody ever uses. But that's a whole other thing. But yeah, so it's always done it inherently, right? They've just started exposing some of that stuff to you, right? The whole, this is how it looks in a unpacked fashion, so that you can start doing your own things. But then because they're exposing it to you, then it needs to be done in a way that users can interact with. When it's a nice proprietary thing, it doesn't actually matter if it's a bit messy, right? One of the things you'll notice, I don't have a file in front of me, is there's a lot of repetition. I don't know if you've picked up on that. So especially with the locations of visuals, it actually checks all that XY coordinates. It actually puts it into that JSON object, but then it also has a serialized body that has those coordinates again, right? So now all of a sudden, they don't mind that, because my app maintains those two in parity. What happens when humans come in and I update that one, but not that one? Which one's important? I don't know. So that's all this hardening stuff that's going to happen over the next while. Right?
Very cool.
No, it is definitely a good feature.
Okay, I just want to check, just for the sake of time, if there's any burning questions to ask regarding Power BI projects. If there's not, let's do announcements, and then we can do the survey. And of course, for us in person here, we can continue the discussion, have a pizza, and have some drinks. So, Sven, ready for just some quick announcements? You want to talk about the Global Power Platform Bootcamp?
Yes. Okay, so I've mentioned it before. It's taking place. The Global Power Platform Bootcamp is a global thing. Okay, in many different cities around the world, all happening around about the end of February. Are we still? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
It's going to take.
The lights have just gone off, but anyway, so it's all happening around different cities around the world, round about the last weekend of February, 23rd, 24th, and ours is a week later. So it's a Saturday. It's the 2nd of March. We're in the phase of calling for speakers. In fact, that ends in a week's time, but we're going to extend it a little bit longer. We are looking for more speakers. You have to speak. I'm presuming you're going to do your thing on time.
Yes, last minute, right?
Last minute.
If it wasn't for the last minute, nothing would happen.
Okay, but anyway, the point is we've got at least another presentation. But I think maybe some people are like, oh, I've got to do something on the Power Platform. Lots of things, lots of components of the Power Platform. But in this case, don't forget, Power BI is part of the Power Platform, in which case you can do a presentation just on Power BI and that will still work perfectly. And you will have lots of people who are keen to attend, and you'll be able to share some knowledge and build a network and do your thing. So I really would like to encourage people to put a nomination forward. I actually don't have the link, but if anyone, I'll put my email address in the chat, and anyone can just email me. Say again?
I'll post it in the chat as well.
Okay, super, thanks.
Well, just for the Power Platform Bootcamp, but I suppose the link for...
Yeah, well, here's my email address.
Okay.
Here's my email address. So call for speakers. Just let me know. I'll forward you the link. But yeah, just step out of your comfort zone. Give it a shot. It's actually worthwhile. Okay. Cool. That's the end.
So just to clarify, anything within the Power Platform.
Yeah. So Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, Power Pages, which I've never tried, and Power BI. Yeah. Power Bots, Virtual Agents, all those things. But
ironically, Power BI is kind of moving out of that space now. Though.
Yes, I know. It's awkward because of the fabric story and whatever. Yeah, it's interesting.
But Power BI never belonged in the Power Platform.
Well, we've been selling it like it's...
but it's, so from an engineering perspective, they were always with the data side. But from a business perspective, because the idea was to make it a tool that's easily, it's that whole self-servicey, that's why they did it. But from a technical perspective, it is a data tool, right? So they've merged back in with the Synapse team. In fact, they kind of took it over. So you'll find all your Haroons and Amirs and Kins are all in charge of Synapse now. Very fancy titles. Corporate vice president for whatnot, so yeah. But yeah, it is a data problem.
Then, other thing in the under announcements is just the next BI user group, which will be on Thursday, 25 January, which will also be, either here or in the Learning Hub. And maybe if you would come back in January, just so you know, it's just out this door, continue in that direction, go up the stairs, and then it's on the third day, the intellectual. We kind of, no, wait, actually it's going to be weekend. It will be in here.
A different boot camp, an intellect boot camp instead of...
it's going to be the intellect boot camp, January and February, so it will be in here. So that's it under announcements, and then the survey. So I've just posted the link for the survey in the chat. Okay, maybe. Well, I'm just going to try and maybe.
Beat you to it.
And let me just do a screen share. There we go. Okay, and just so you know why this is important for us is we obviously want to make the BI user group as valuable as possible because it's a community-driven event after all. And if we get your inputs that actually help us structure the following year in terms of topics, the format, how we do it, and there's also a question there if you would like to volunteer to speak. Once again, since it's community-driven, volunteer-based, we are heavily dependent on those. So if you would like to volunteer, and even if you don't know about a topic yet, just put up your name and we can reach out and have a discussion about what you can possibly present on. Okay, so for those here in person, it's time to replace the lamp apparently, but you can just scan the QR code on the screen. And then for those online,
Can I scan it from you?
Yeah. We'd appreciate your inputs on that. Okay. Next.